My ID is 22DCE113 and today I am going to explain two software process models which are waterfall software process model and incremental model. So basically what is waterfall model? It is the one of the most traditional method of process models in which it follows a top to down approach which follows sequential approach, and there are different phases which are performed in waterfall model. So let me explain via diagram of the waterfall model. So first of all, there is requirement analysis. Requirement analysis is followed by system design. System design is followed by implementation. Implementation is followed by testing. Testing is followed by evaluation and feedback. So basically this is how the waterfall model works. So first of all, there is requirement analysis, where in requirement analysis process from the stakeholders, the company gets the requirements of the software which is to be prepared. Then a system design. So in a system design, a blueprint of a software is made, so in which the designers give up basically a software blueprint of what is to be produced according to the requirements of the stakeholders. Then after a design is made, so there is an implementation phase. So in implementation phase, all the coding work is done, in which generally a software is created of what the requirements of the stakeholders were needed. And then there is a testing phase. So in testing phase, when the coding is done, there is a testing done of during 2-3 times, in which the software is tested, and when the software is tested and it is okay by the developers, then an evaluation and feedback is taken. So in this evaluation and feedback phase, the stakeholders come back in the picture, where the feedback of the stakeholders are taken, and the feedback may be positive or negative by what the requirements is fulfilled of the stakeholders or not. So now let's take on the advantages of waterfall model. So basically advantages it is that it is simple and clear. So there are not much complications in waterfall model, as it goes in a top-down approach and all the things are made simple and clear. Then another advantage of waterfall model is that the requirements which are taken from the stakeholders are clear and crisp. So so we get a picture forehand that what a software would be look like. And disadvantages of waterfall model may be that what the requirements are provided by the stakeholders cannot be changed after a system design phase, and also when a phase is completed, we cannot go backtrack to any other phase. So this is the main advantage, that after an implementation process we cannot go back to system design. So when a coding part is completed, basically when the requirements are changed by the stakeholders, so the blueprint can't be changed after implementation process is done. And one more disadvantage is that the feedback is at the last position in the waterfall model. So the stakeholders directly come in the picture after requirement analysis is in feedback position. So during these 3 phases of design, implementation and testing, no opinion of stakeholders is taken, and they directly come in the picture during feedback. So if the stakeholders are not happy with the work of the software, so the whole model needs to be changed, and when the requirements are changed by the stakeholders, this whole process needs to be repeated, and it is very ambiguous. So basically let's talk about applications of this waterfall model. So they generally work during the small sized and medium sized projects, where there is no large complex methods of what the software needs to be produced. Then second application is that the requirements produced by the stakeholders can't be changed, so they should remain same during whole the process. And last but not the least, there should not be any change after a phase is completed. So this model should work smoothly till the evaluation and feedback process. So system design, implementation and testing process should be done at a one go. So thank you. This was what the waterfall model looks like. Now let's talk about incremental model. So as we discussed earlier about waterfall model, there were few disadvantages of waterfall model, such as inflexibility to changes and late customer feedback. So to solve these disadvantages, incremental model was introduced. So what is incremental model? So in incremental model, a large project is divided into smaller projects in which each increment is made after a phase is completed. So in this, the stakeholders come into picture very earlier than waterfall model. So when one increment is completed, after one increment is completed, the feedback of the stakeholder is taken in incremental model. So let's understand more about incremental model via diagram. feedback. So this is the incremental models diagram. So first of all, the requirements is taken from the stakeholders by the company, and then it is divided into smaller parts. So this is build 1, where the requirements of build 1 are taken through the company, and then a design means a blueprint is made of build 1. Then the implementation and testing process are done, and finally a feedback portion is introduced after implementation and testing. So this was the major outcome of the incremental model from the waterfall model, in which feedback is taken after implementation and testing. And when this feedback portion is completed and the stakeholders are satisfied with this part, then again requirements are taken from the user, and another build is created, and in another build it takes the same process of design, then implementation and testing, and then feedback. So there are a large projects can be divided into n number of builds. So all the builds follow these main 3 steps, which are design, then implementation and testing, and then feedback. So here after build 1 is completed, then only the build 2 will be taken place. So this was the major advantage of the incremental model, in which the stakeholders come in picture after implementation and testing, and requirements can be changed by the stakeholders and can be accepted by the software engineers. So let's talk about the advantages. So in this we can get the early detection. We can get the early detection of defects. So what does it basically mean? Early detection of defects. So after in build 1, if the implementation and testing process is done, and then the feedback of the owner is taken. So if this feedback is not satisfied of this testing, then they can go and track back in the build 1. So in this build 2 till build n thing will not be disturbed, and only this much portion of build 1 will be repeated. So in this case, the ambiguity in the incremental model was cleared. Then let's talk about customer feedback. So after implementation and testing, the customer feedback is taken place, and if the customer feedback is positive, then only the build 2 will take place. So there is no waste of time and no waste of resources during incremental model. And last but not the least, reduced risk. So there is a reduced risk of failing the software. Means if there is a error in build 1 and the customer is not happy with what the testing was done in build 1, so this build 1 can be erased and can be performed from very start, and the requirements can be changed during build 1. So whole the project is not disturbed, and only a small part of the project needs to be changed. So which was advantage of the incremental model, which could not be taken place in waterfall model. So now let's talk about our disadvantages of this. So in disadvantages, this produce an estimate of higher cost. Means as it is divided into different builds, so the builds are more in number, and design process, testing and implementation processes are done again and again. So the use of resources and the use of man work is very high in this incremental model, which causes in a higher cost of the users, and they generally may not be satisfied with what the estimate is created. Then second, if this build 1 is not completed, then the company cannot start the build 2 or build 3. So to start the new build or new project, the previous project should be completed, and the next build is generally dependent on the previous build. So if this is not completed, then build 2 cannot be started. So this was a major disadvantage of the incremental model. And let's talk about the applications of incremental model. So first of all, this is generally used for large projects. So as there are large projects, they are divided into smaller parts, such as build 1, build 2 and till build n. So this may be easy for the software to take part, because in software engineering team there are different roles provided to them. So as it is divided into different builds, the different team members can complete all the builds, and this may be completed in a shorter time. So this is one of the application. Then second, if we know that the requirements may be adaptive by the users, and we may change the requirements during different builds, so this incremental model can be used, as the requirements for all the builds are different provided by the user. So if build 1 is completed, and after feedback the customer wants to change the different requirements, so in build 2 the requirements can be changed, and the further design, implementation and testing part can be done using different requirements provided by the user. And third, it is the prototype of the incremental model. So from this diagram we can clearly understand how this incremental model works, and design, implementation and testing part is completed, and then user feedback is taken place. So that's
Hello everyone, my ID is 22DCE116, and today I will explain about prototype model. So a prototype is not the actual software or model, it is just a replica of how our software will look in future. Sometimes it is also referred to as a throwaway model. A prototype is called a blueprint, or we can say that a toy implementation. So basically we use this model when the client do not know the exact project requirement. So the interaction between the client and the developers team is one of the important factor of this model. So now let us understand the various phases of this model through a diagram. So the first phase is requirement gathering. We will take the initial requirement from the client. Then a quick design or a prototype or a basic framework of the prototype is prepared based on the requirement gathered. Then we will develop a working prototype of the model. After that, the customer will evaluate the project, and based on the feedback received, the changes and improvement are then incorporated in the system, and the loop continues. So the developers have to go under multiple iteration until the final prototype is achieved. Thus, once the prototype is approved, then the final implementation is carried out. So this is the diagram of prototype model. So talking about the advantages and disadvantages of the prototype model. So the first advantage is it reduces the risk of miscommunication, as the client developer interaction is the main feature of this model. Along with that, it improves user satisfaction because the user have the opportunity to provide input and see the evolving system. Hence, the chances to meet their level of expectations are higher. Along with that, faster development cycle, early error detection, and clarity requirement are some of the advantages of this model. Talking about the disadvantages of this system, documentation challenges. The documentation is poor, as the requirement changes frequently. Also, poor decision making, because there is no fixed number of iterations, so we can't say when the development and implementation of the actual project will start. Along with that, this model is expensive and time and resource consuming. So now applications. Some of the industries and organizations which uses this model are automobile industries, then construction site architectures use this model to create small prototypes using thermocol and cardboard to visualize the elevation and functioning of their projects. Also, game developers uses this model, web designers, UX UI designers, all these teams uses this prototype model. So now let's discuss about the iterative model. The iterative model was designed as an improvement of the previously discussed models. By iterative model, we means that the software development activities are repeated in cycles. These cycles are also referred to as iterations. The major concept of these models are very similar to the previously discussed models. The main difference is that this model allows us to go back in the previous stages, allow us to update the criteria and make necessary changes. Thus, a new version of the model is prepared after each iterations. Now let us discuss the various phases of this model through a diagram. the first phase is requirement gathering, as we have to take the initial requirements from the client, then design, coding and implementation of the model, integration and system testing, and then maintenance. The major difference between this model and the previously discussed model is that here feedback paths are given after each of the phases, so we can go back to the previous stage if any changes or updations are to be made. So talking about the advantages of this model is flexible as the changes can be implemented at any period of time. Also it is cheap as it takes less resources, and if the requirement changes frequently, then also it can be easily implemented as we can go back in the reverse phases. Now disadvantages of this system is that it is not well suited for constantly shifting needs. Along with that, if someone has to use this model for small projects, then it is not convenient. Applications. This model is used by certain industries and organizations, like Electronic World use this model by providing us different versions of mobile phones, refrigerators, speakers, etc. every now and then. So industry keeps on changing itself through iterative processes. Also digital marketing, healthcare and educational curriculum development, all these are the industries and organizations where iterative model is used. Thank you.
Iterative model, the main limitation was of handling uncertainties. So to overcome that, the spiral model was introduced. So about spiral model, spiral model is a software development methodology which includes the iterative approach as well as the classic waterfall model approach. So now let us discuss in detail about the spiral model using the diagram. The first phase is of determining the objectives and identifying the alternative solutions for it. So in this phase, the company interacts with the client and they gather the requirement, and based upon that they determine the objective of for preparing the software, and in this phase they also identify the alternative methods to prepare the software. The next phase is the identifying and resolving the risk, which is one of the most important phase in this spiral model. So after discussing the various alternative solutions, they evaluating the cost and the risk of the in the solution, they choose one of the best solutions for the software, and then after evaluating the risk, they build the prototype for it. The next phase is of developing the next version of software. So based on the prototype they built in the second phase, they will develop a next version of software in this phase. After this, the last phase is of review and feedback from the clients. So after developing the prototype as a software, then they take the review and take the feedback from the clients, and after taking the reviews and feedbacks, the changes given by the clients for that software are taken into consideration, and the planning of the next phase will be done. So as long as the client is satisfied with the software, this cycle works upon. Now let us discuss some advantages of this model. So one of the advantage is the risk management, which is the most important in this model. The next one is the flexibility. As you can see here, before completing the phase, they review, they take the feedbacks from the clients, and based upon that they make the changes in their software. The next one is of incremental development. As after each and every phase, there is an increment in the software, and that is after each cycle they will develop a new version of a software. Another one is the suitability for the large and complex project. As a spiral model is a complex, and the large projects and complex projects with the highly uncertainty can be prepared using this spiral model. So as we discussed the advantages, now let us see the disadvantages. The first will be of time consuming. So as long as this spiral works, the time is consumed more, and the next one, that's the next disadvantages is of cost effectiveness and time complexity and cost. So the number of spiral will increase the complexity of any particular projects, and due to which there is a the documentation of this particular project which is made with the spiral model will be challenging. Also it is inappropriate for the static and small projects. Now the application are the large scale projects, projects with the evolving requirement, then projects with the critical elements in which the identifying and analyzing risk is more important, are applicable for the spiral model. So as discussed previously, in spiral model the major limitation was the documentation and formality. So to overcome that limitation, the RAD model was introduced. RAD means rapid application development. So the basic principles of this model are user involvement, time boxing, with collaboration of team, etc. Now let us understand this model with the diagram. The first will be elicit requirements. So in this, the company interact with the client and gather the requirements using different eliciting methods. The next will be the modularizing the requirements. So in this phase, the design or according to the requirements, the design of the software is done, and then the next will be the construction phase. according to the design of the software, the modules are divided into the particular teams, and in a team there are different phases. So, in a team, a particular team is given a module. So, according to that module, they analyze, design, they develop the code, and then test. After that, the modules prepared by all the teams are integrated as a one software, and at the last stage, it is tested once again and then deployed to the customer. So the advantages of this RAD model is the enhanced user involvement. So whenever the teams are given the module, they frequently involve the customer feedbacks and reviews along with this all. Then cost effectiveness, as it is not as the team is given a particular module, so the cost and the resources used will be less. Next is the effective use of resources. As I discussed previously, as the modules are divided, the resources used in this will be minimized. Next will be the higher quality output. As a team given only one module to complete, they will the output of this particular team will be in higher quality, and which enhance the last output of that is the final project, final software. Now this model also involves the disadvantages. So first disadvantages will be the dependency on a skilled personnel. Means if members in the team are not skilled, this can impact the whole software and the last product that is given to the client. Next will be the increased complexity. So if it is a small size project, this RAD model will be perfect. But for the large scale projects, this is not appropriate, as for the large scale many teams will be given the many modules, and this will use the more resources and the development team, and so hence the cost of this cost at the last, the cost will be increased. Now the applications of this model will be the prototyping projects, the small to medium size projects, as I discussed earlier, and this model can be also used in the web and mobile applications. Also the main feature of this RAD model is the use of automated and powerful tools. So the teams in this construction phase use the powerful and automated tools to develop the module, and hence also as the teams are divided, it has the collaborative and development environment in this. Thank you.
Hello, my ID is 22DCE118. I am going to explain V model. So as we saw in RAD model, the major disadvantages were its increased complexity and lack of suitability for stable requiremented projects. So in V model, the process is executed in a structured or sequential manner. So let us understand V model through a diagram. seen in the figure, in V model, processes follow a V-shaped structure. So the main characteristic of V model is that with every development phase, a testing phase is associated with it. And next development phase starts only after the first development phase is accepted after testing. So let's see the different phases. First is requirement analysis, next is system design, architecture design, module design. Let us try to understand with an example. Suppose we have to construct a building. So requirement analysis, we will gather the requirement and analyze the requirement of the residents. Then we will create a system design, that is external structure of a building. Then architecture design, that is designing of internal structure of the building. And module design, that is the building would be divided into different rooms or floors. So individual design of each module. Next is implementation, that is coding. And along with each development phase, there is a testing phase associated. So after every development phase, that the output or outcome is tested. In these phases, it is tested without implementation, that is before coding, and after coding again they are tested. So this is the flow of the process in a V model. Now let us discuss the advantages of V model. First of all, it is simple and clear, easy to understand. There is no iteration or anything. Second, main advantage is it is cost effective, as mistakes can be detected in every stage, and there is no wastage of resources or wastage of money, time. Next advantage is it is suitable for small to medium sized projects, which was a major disadvantage of RAD model. Now disadvantages of V model. So it is rigid and inflexible, as changes cannot be added in the later stage or after the process has been started. And other disadvantage is it is unsuitable for large products and cannot follow, like the projects which who have not decided the requirements fully at the beginning of the project. Now applications of the V model. First, as I said, that small to medium sized projects. Second would be cost efficient or limited costed projects. So as I said, that advantage, the cost effectiveness of V model makes it suitable for limited costed projects. And another application would be projects with stable requirement, like whose requirements are already decided from the beginning. That's all. Thank you.
My name is Manasvi Vaishani and my ID is 22DCE, and I am going to explain you about two process model. First is Agile process model and second is DevOps process model. So first let's start with Agile process model. So in today's era, there are many software development application or shopping applications such as Flipkart, Myntra, Instagram, Facebook. All this uses Agile methodology. So basically, Agile is based on incremental and iterative processes. So let me explain you with an example. So let's take Instagram. It's a social media application. So if a user is installing an application Instagram, so what all requirements do we need to gather? So first is follow, unfollow options. Second is edit profile. Third is search. Fourth is messaging. Fifth is posting photos. Then upload story. make reels and go live. So basically these are the 8 requirements that are needed for Instagram. So let me explain you with a very basic traditional model. So we have a waterfall model. We are aware of that because it has already been explained. So in waterfall process model, first requirements are gathered. So first all these 8 requirements would be gathered, and it might take 2 or 3 months to process this thing, and then it will be designed, and then it would be implemented, and then testing would be done, and then deployment. That is, it would be the application will be deployed to the users or the customers who will give feedbacks or reviews over it, and finally maintenance, which is the most important thing, because if you are making any application, it needs timely maintenance. So this entire process would take a year or more than it, because every step takes 2 or 3 months. Now if I am using agile methodology, so how would it work? It would work in iteration. So all the requirements would be divided into multiple iterations, and it would be designed as per the customer's reviews and changes that they want, and it would take minimal time. So let me explain you with the diagram. So we have first iteration, that is, and it has planning, design, development, testing, deployment, review, and launch. So this is a iteration. This is iteration 1. Similarly, there would be iteration 2, and further on there would be iteration 3. So these all iteration will contain these steps to be followed. Okay, so let me explain. First, these 3 requirements would be taken. So they would be planned, then the application would be designed, it would be developed, and then testing would be done, and then it would be deployed to the customers, and they will use it, and they will give the reviews and feedbacks, and they will give the changes that they require in the application. So then it would be launched, and when it launches, then the second 2 requirements would be taken. Again, it would be planned, designed, developed, tested, and all the changes that were required in iteration 1 would be resolved in iteration 2. Then again it would be launched, and the next 3 steps would be planned, designed, deployed, tested, developed, review, and launched. Each iteration is resolving the changes that are required by the customers. So at last we would get a very enhanced and efficient product out of Instagram. So this is how agile model is beneficial to the software that we are developing. So when this model is used, so when the project size is large, when any project needs frequent changes, like after every iteration they need some requirements or some changes to be done, and when the team is highly qualified, experienced, and in this process, customer interaction is after iteration, means customer is being made to the team again and again to get the changes that we require, and projects with flexible timeline and budgets. Now, what are the advantages of agile model? So firstly, customer satisfaction and involvement is the most important thing, because customers are satisfied after this process. They are getting very enhanced output from it, and there is a strong communication with the customer, and there is a little planning required, because there are certain iterations, so easily properly everything is maintained. And efficient design, as I told, enhanced product is getting we, and then anytime changes are acceptable, and updated versions, because at every iteration we get a new model, so there is an updated version we are getting, and the development time is too less. That is, first iteration would take 3 to 4 weeks, Second iteration would take again 3 to 4 weeks. Similarly, we can complete it within 2 months. And yeah, there are even disadvantages. That is, there are lack of documentation. So as there is minimal time, so the software development team does not focus on making documentation. So if the customer is using Instagram, and if for maintenance he needs a documentation, then there is a difficulty in getting it. And second, depends heavily on customer interaction. So if the customer is not clear with what changes he needs, the product might go wrong. Okay, so this was our agile model. So our next model is DevOps process model. It is an enhanced model of the agile model. It has made few modifications in it. So it is basically it based on continuous integration, or we can say it has a continuous process. So what new modifications it had was it integrated development and operations. So in agile model basically focused on the development of the software, but DevOps model integrates both. It focuses on both development and the operations that are needed for the software. And second, it emphasizes on IaaS. And even DevOps model has a very good security integration. So let me explain what is DevOps model. Okay, so DevOps model is distributed in 2 teams: development team Okay, so this focuses on planning, designing, and development. And second we have operation team, which focuses on testing and deployment. So the development team first gathers all the requirements, they plan it, they design it, develop it, and then it gives to the operation team. And the operation team then test it and deploy to the customers, and customers give them reviews and feedbacks. So these feedbacks are given again to the development team. So the development team will again work over the changes or the bugs that were noticed by the customers. So this way it is a continuous process. Development team and operation team, they work together. We have many applications like Amazon, Netflix, Facebook, Adobe. They uses this DevOps model to make their applications. So let me explain you by a diagram. So how it works. So first of all the requirements are gathered, they are planned, planning is done, and then coding is done. The code which is required to make the software is done. So basically it uses the tool Git. Most of the means it's not the Git only, there are many other tools that they can use, but most of the time Git is used. And then they build the software, and then they test it, and after testing it is given to the operation team. So this is what the DevOps team do, this part. And even the building of software, they uses tools like Maven or Gradle. And here for testing they get the bugs that are in the software. So they get out the bugs, and then it is given to the operation team, and then it is deployed to the customers, and then it is operated, and then the software or the application is monitored, and the basic tool which is used is Legios. And this way, and after monitoring it, it is again given to the development team for the further planning. So these both teams are integrated. at DevOps model. This is how it works. So what are the advantages are that it adapts to faster changes, it delivers quickly, the time taken is very less, and the deployment is consistent. They easily interact with the customers, and there is less. This process is cost efficient. And yeah, there are some challenges like that, communication challenges with the customers, and this development, the DevOps model depends highly on tools. So if the tools are not efficient enough, then it may create some issues. Now let me explain by an example. So let us take an example of Netflix. We all are familiar with this. So this highly used DevOps model for its application. So in 2007 it started its online streaming services, and in 2014 the downtime would cost $200 billion, which was too high. So to overcome such issues, what it did, it opted for DevOps model and developed a tool called Sign Admin. And continuously created, so what the Sign Admin did, it continuously created bugs without affecting customers. So it came out with a very good and efficient application to be used. So this is how DevOps model motivated all the developers to make such models, and which was easy to use and easy to modernize.